He spit in my face right there on Main Street during a parade meant to celebrate freedom, because I dared to ask why my teenage son was being treated like a criminal for walking home. Behind him stood Officer Gerald Kane. Badge, gleaming arms crossed like judge and executioner, while the crowd watched in frozen silence. That moment didn't just humiliate me. It exposed a system built to crush mothers like me, sons like mine, and anyone who dared to demand dignity. But what Kane didn't know was that by trying to silence me, he ignited a movement that would shake our entire town and reveal a truth too powerful to bury. He spit in my face right there under the burning July sun in front of the whole crowd because I had asked why my son was being frisked like a criminal for walking home from school. And behind him stood Officer Gerald Kane, towering in his blue uniform chest, puffed like he owned the city, his badge gleaming with entitlement, and his fists clenched as if justice was his to decide. He didn't flinch when the crowd gasped, didn't look away when I wiped the warm, humiliating mess from my cheek. His lips curled into a smirk like he had done something righteous. And the others. They just stood there, phones raised but feet frozen afraid, or worse, indifferent. That moment burned into my skin deeper than the spit ever could. But let me back up. You need to know who I am. I'm not some activist. I'm not looking for a fight. My name is Alicia Monroe. I'm a widow, a mother of one, and I've spent all 42 years of my life in Harmony Falls, Georgia, a town that smiles sweet in daylight but sharpens its fangs in back rooms and badge meetings. I work at the local high school cafeteria, have a small vegetable garden, and bake lemon squares on Sundays. I believe in peace. In raising my son, Devin, to be respectful even when disrespected. I believed silence was safety. Until that day. Until Gerald Kane spit in my face. It began small, like these things always do. Devin had come home one afternoon with shaken hands and watery eyes. Said Officer Pike had pulled over to question him, wanted to know why a young black man was walking near the Lawson condos. Devin had shown his school ID spoken clearly, even smiled. But that wasn't enough. They still made him spread his arms and patted him down. I told myself it was a misunderstanding, that maybe Officer Pike was new or misinformed. But then it happened again, and again, each time more humiliating. Then I saw it outside the grocery store, a white boy from Devin's school walking the same block, same backpack, same hoodie, and no one stopped him. No frisking, no questions. That's when my stomach twisted with truth. Still, I said nothing. I kept folding Devin's laundry, kneeling at church, nodding at the very officers who saw through us. Until the 4th of July parade. That's when it all changed. We had just arrived. Devin wore his best button-up. I made him one of those red, white, and blue hats from construction paper. We stood near the curb, clapping as the brass band marched past. Then came the patrol unit black SUVs, rolling slow sirens muted, but presence loud. Kane spotted us. His eyes locked on Devin like a hawk. He signaled Pike. The SUV screeched. Doors flung open. "Hands on your head, boy," Pike yelled. Devin's smile vanished. Now he barked, dragging him to the curb, pushing him face first into hot pavement. "What's he done?" I cried. "He's done nothing." But Pike ignored me. Kane stood watching, arms folded, nodding like a proud general. I rushed forward. "He's 14, I screamed. "You can't treat him like this." That's when Kane stepped forward chest to chest with me. His breath stank of coffee and arrogance. "Ma'am, back off." "No," I said, trembling. You don't get to humiliate my son on Independence Day." His nostrils flared. "You think I care what day it is?" Then he spit. Right there, like I was less than human. The world froze. My son, still on the ground, looked up in horror. The crowd gasped. Phones came out. Some whispered. Some cried. But no one moved. Not even the mayor's aide, who was just feet away. Kane turned and walked off. Resisting, he muttered. Uncooperative. He didn't care. He'd done it before, probably worse, and always got away. That night I couldn't sleep. Devin sat on his bed knees to chest. My cheek still burned, not from the spit but from the truth, that it could happen. In daylight, with witnesses, and still nothing. I looked around our small home, the photos on the wall, my husband's folded flag in the glass box. He died in Afghanistan, believing in a country that just humiliated his wife and son. That broke me. Something inside me snapped. I walked to my room, pulled out the dusty laptop, logged into an account I hadn't touched in years, and I typed, "My name is Alicia Monroe. I'm a mother. Today, a police officer spit in my face for defending my son." Then I hit upload. A quiet fire lit behind my ribs. I didn't know what would happen next. I just knew I wasn't staying silent anymore. By sunrise, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Notifications piled up like autumn leaves, some from people I hadn't heard from in years, others from strangers I'd never met. Some wrote with tears in their eyes, offering prayers. Others sent threats, their words dripping with venom. "Stop lying. Your son's a thug. Trying to get attention, huh?" But the worst ones were from the ones I knew. From neighbors, church ladies, women I'd served cookies to at PTA meetings. "Alicia, maybe you misunderstood. It's dangerous to stir things up. You don't want to ruin a man's career over a little spit." A little spit. That's what they called it. Like it wasn't a declaration. Like it wasn't the physical embodiment of the contempt they had for people like me. The local station didn't call me. Didn't ask my side. But they ran the clip anyway. A 30-second video low quality filmed from behind a stroller. You couldn't see the spit, just my face jerking back, my hands raised, and Kane walking away like nothing happened. The headline, "Tense Interaction Between Police and Woman at Parade." Tense. That was the word they chose, as if it were a handshake gone wrong. Meanwhile, Kane released a statement calling my accusations baseless and inflammatory, and claimed I had aggressively confronted officers during a lawful investigation. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. He was rewriting the truth, and the town, my town, was letting him. I went to work that day like I always did. Hair tied back, apron clean. I served meatloaf to kids whose mothers were now whispering behind my back. The principal didn't look me in the eye. A teacher turned and walked the other way in the hall. Even Miss Edna, my friend since junior high, said, "Alicia, maybe it's time to let this go." But I couldn't, because Devin had stopped speaking. Because he sat at the window each night, eyes empty, waiting for something to change. I thought about transferring him to another school, about moving, starting over. But I knew that would mean letting Kane win. That would mean teaching Devin to retreat. And I wasn't going to do that. Not anymore. That weekend, I sat with Devin on our porch. "You okay, baby?" He didn't answer. Just looked at the street. "Do you think I looked weak?" he asked finally. When he pushed me down, my chest cracked open. I reached for his hand. "No, baby. I think you looked brave. You stayed calm. You didn't fight back. That's strength." He didn't believe me. I could see it, because in his world strength looked like Cain, big, loud white, and untouchable. I stood up and walked into the house. I opened the box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old photos of Marcus, my husband, in his army fatigues, of me in the same uniform long before I became a mother. People forget that I served too. 4 years in the National Guard. I took out the folder with my discharge papers and put them on the table. We were strong too, I said. Just because people forget doesn't mean it's not true. That night I created a Facebook page, Justice for Alicia and Devin. I posted every photo, every video, every version of the truth that Cain and his department tried to twist. I opened the inbox for submissions, anonymous stories, videos, anything. Within hours, they came. A girl named Chloe wrote Officer Pike pulled me over at 16 and asked if I was selling pills. A mother wrote my son was handcuffed for skateboarding in the parking lot. A young black teacher, still shaking in his message, wrote, Cain followed me home. I didn't know if I'd make it to my door. I printed every story, highlighted names, dates, patterns. It wasn't just me. It never was. I bought a notebook and started a timeline. Every name, every time, every badge number. I wasn't just grieving anymore, I was building something. Devin watched me from the doorway. He didn't say much, but the next day he joined me, helped me staple the pages to poster boards, helped me organize the folders. We were still afraid, but now we were together in it. 2 nights later, someone slashed my tires. No note. No warning. I found it at dawn, rubber-shredded red paint scraped across the driver's side door. The message was clear, but I just looked at it, then turned back toward the house. Devin was watching from the window, eyes wide. I smiled at him slow and steady, because I needed him to know we don't run. I called the mechanic. I kept going to work, and at night I kept posting. By Monday, our story was national. A civil rights attorney named Malcolm Green sent me a message. You don't know me, he wrote, but I know injustice when I see it. I'd like to help. And just like that, the tide began to shift. Not fast, not clean, but undeniable. Something was rising, not just in me, but in others. I could feel it. Gerald Cain thought he was silencing a mother, but he had awakened a storm. It started with whispers behind locker doors inside barber shops in the pews of the old Baptist church on Maple Street. Whispers that turned into questions, questions that turned into voices, and voices that turned into something far more dangerous to men like Gerald Cain memory. Collective memory. Folks started remembering the time their nephew was pulled over for looking suspicious just 1 block from his own house. The time a grandmother was cited for jaywalking while crossing with her cane. The time a black business owner was fined for noise violations on a street with louder white-owned bars. All of it had been brushed off as coincidence, as routine. But now, with Cain's spit still hanging in the air, all of it looked different. I watched it unfold in real time. The Facebook page became a lighthouse. Each post reached farther. A church choir in Savannah sang for us. A black veterans group in Alabama mailed us food. High school kids from 3 counties over began holding signs that read, "We are Devin." But with support came scrutiny. Gerald Cain wasn't just some officer. He was the brother-in-law of the police chief. His father was a retired judge. His godfather, the mayor. I knew going in that challenging him would feel like throwing stones at a fortress. But I also knew brick by brick even fortresses crumble. That Tuesday, Malcolm Green arrived in Harmony Falls. He stepped off the bus with a battered briefcase and a calm that unnerved everyone who doubted him. Tall, dark-skinned, with silver streaks in his beard, he looked like a man who had seen too much and still stood. We met at the diner. "You're Alicia Monroe?" he asked. "That's me." I nodded. "Good," he said, sitting. "Because I came to fight." He reviewed my files, meticulously labeled, color-coded dates highlighted. I had never done anything like this before, but motherhood makes you resourceful. When I told him about the tires, about the stairs, about the silence from the school board, he just nodded. "Expected," he said, "but don't let it shake you." That silence. It's the sound of a wall cracking. That night we went live together. Malcolm explained the civil rights lawsuit, explained the pattern of abuse. He read out loud the other complaints, naming names. He said Devin's name with the same respect he'd give to a soldier. They wanted to erase him, Malcolm said, but they didn't realize Alicia Monroe was watching, and she remembers everything. Within 48 hours, the department went into damage control. They held a press conference. The chief wore his medals, stood stiff eyes darting. "We take allegations seriously," he said. "Officer Kane is on administrative leave pending investigation." Administrative leave. That was their idea of justice. Paid vacation for public humiliation. But they didn't realize we weren't waiting for them anymore. We scheduled our own hearing. A town hall, the local rec center opened its doors and the people flooded in. Journalists, neighbors, veterans, students, black, white, young, old. Many of them had never spoken publicly before, but that night they did. He slammed my teenage daughter against a fence. They took my brother in without cause. I've been afraid to jog after dark for years. One by one, voices filled the room like floodwater breaching a dam. And then I stood up. My hands trembled, but I held the mic tight. "I served this country," I said. "I fed your children in that cafeteria. I buried my husband in uniform. And last week a man who's supposed to protect us spit in my face for speaking truth." The room went quiet. "You don't have to like me," I said. "But if you let this go unpunished, you're telling every black child in this town that their dignity is negotiable. Mine is not." A thunderous applause erupted, and across the room I saw Devin smile, really smile for the first time in weeks. But just as hope bloomed, backlash struck. The next day, an anonymous account posted our address, called us liars, said my husband had never served, that Devin had been caught stealing. None of it was true, but lies spread like fire in dry brush. The mailbox was torched, my car window smashed. A dead raccoon was thrown at our porch. "You okay?" Malcolm asked. I looked down at the shattered glass, then back at him. "You said this would happen." "I did." "So, what do we do?" He smiled, calm and sharp. "We make it public. We posted everything. The threats, the damage, the photo of the raccoon as ugly as it was, and it worked. Because ugliness in the light disgusts even those who once ignored it. That week, protests began. Small at first, just a few students with cardboard signs, then a group of teachers, then veterans in full uniform. The chant echoed across town: justice for Devin, dignity for Alicia, and Kane. He stayed hidden. No public statement, no apology, just silence and a PR team scrambling to rewrite his image. But no rewrite could erase what happened, because we had the truth, the footage, the testimonies. The town was no longer silent. It was humming with a pulse of reckoning. They had mistaken us for weak, for isolated. But the thin blue line was cracking, and behind it, truth waited loud, unshakable, and burning. They say war changes a person. I never imagined mine would start in a school cafeteria and reach all the way to the courtroom steps with TV trucks parked outside my house and protest signs on my porch. But war had found me. Not the kind with bullets or battlefields. This was a mother's war fought with memory truth, and the kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises but scars your soul. I had fought quietly my whole life. Now I was fighting loud. Devin wasn't just my son anymore. He had become a symbol. Every time he stepped outside, people pointed, whispered, clapped him on the back. Some of it made him smile, but most of it made him curl inward. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said one night, pushing his dinner aside. "I just want to be normal." My heart clenched. "I know, baby," I whispered. But what they did wasn't normal. And if we don't stand up now, it'll happen again. To someone else. Maybe someone who won't come home. He didn't answer. But later, I found him rereading one of the hate messages. I gently took the phone from his hand. "They want you small," I said. "They're scared of the man you'll grow into. Don't give them what they want." Meanwhile, the town began to split down invisible lines. People I'd known for decades crossed the street to avoid me. Parents pulled their children from my cafeteria line. The school board asked if I'd consider taking a leave of absence for your own peace of mind. I said no, because I had done nothing wrong. Because every time they tried to shrink my life, I pushed back. Malcolm filed the official lawsuit that week. Civil rights violations, emotional distress, pattern of abuse. We included every witness statement, every video clip, every instance that Kane and his squad had gone unchecked. The mayor's office called it politically motivated. The police union threatened counteraction. But we weren't intimidated. We were prepared. Then something happened no one expected. One of their own broke rank. It came in an email from a blocked address. No name. Just a PDF attachment and a message, "He's done worse. You'll find what you need in here." Malcolm and I stared at the screen. Inside were internal disciplinary records from the Harmony Falls Police Department. Kane had been investigated 5 times in the last 3 years excessive force racial profiling misconduct during a traffic stop harassment of a minor, all closed with insufficient evidence, all buried. Until now, I printed them, highlighted everything. One case in particular caught my eye, a complaint from a young mother 2 years ago, who said Kane had pinned her against a hood for asking why her toddler was crying in the back seat during a stop. No video, no witnesses. Her name was redacted, but her pain wasn't. I cried reading it, because I knew what it felt like to be unheard. We called a press conference. Malcolm stood behind the podium suit, crisp voice unwavering. "This is no longer a question of opinion," he said. "This is a pattern, a system. And today we are breaking the silence." He released the documents to the public. The crowd gasped. Journalists scribbled. And somewhere inside that fortress of power I imagined Kane grinding his teeth. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked the house in silence, checked the locks twice, then 3 times. There was a weight in my chest I couldn't shake, not fear exactly, but something deeper. The knowledge that when you threaten power, it doesn't go quietly. At 2 a.m., someone pounded on the door. I froze. Devin rushed out of his room. I signaled him to stay back. I stepped toward the door, barefoot, heart hammering. More pounding. Then a voice, hoarse, shaky. "It's me. Officer Raymond." I cracked the door. It was him, Pike's partner. Sweat drenched his collar, eyes wild. "I had to come," he said. "They're planning something. Against you, against your lawyer, they want to discredit you, plant things, frame your boy. He looked over his shoulder, whispering like a hunted man, I can't be part of it any more. I'll testify. Just protect my name. And then he left, disappearing into the dark like a ghost who'd told too much. I closed the door slowly, breathless. That was the turning point. With Officer Raymond's testimony, we had more than patterns, we had proof. That night, we began gathering affidavits. Devon gave his official statement. I sat beside him the whole time, holding his hand, never once looking away. When he described the way Kane's spit landed, the way the crowd watched in silence, my fists curled so tight I thought my nails would break skin. But I stayed quiet. Let him finish. Because it was his truth, and he needed to speak it in his voice. Then the threats escalated. Anonymous calls to Malcolm's hotel. A brick through the windshield of his rental car. Go back to Atlanta, the note said, taped in red. He didn't flinch. Just had it towed, walked to my house and kept building the case. They're scared, he said. That's how you know you're close. One morning, I walked to the porch and saw a package. No name. No return address. I opened it. Slowly inside was a plastic bag with a used tissue and a typed note. Consider this a gift. Now shut up. They were mocking me, recreating the moment Kane had tried to erase me with spit. But they didn't realize every attempt to silence me only sharpened my fire. I called the news. I showed them the package. I looked dead into the camera and said, You think this scares me? You've already done the worst. And I'm still here. The story exploded. National anchors picked it up. Civil rights leaders flew in. A mural of Devon went up on the side of the rec center with the words "Still Here" in bold crimson letters, and Harmony Falls. It was no longer quiet. It had become the center of a storm. But inside that storm, I stood tall. Because I was no longer just a cafeteria worker, no longer just a widow. I was a mother. I was a soldier. And I was at war. And this time, the war wasn't just for my son. It was for every mother who'd been silenced. Every child who'd been humiliated. Every voice that had been erased. Because I had found my voice again, and now the whole world was listening. The sun rose slowly over Harmony Falls that morning, but the tension had beaten it there hours earlier. You could feel it in the air, tight, expectant, like the whole town was holding its breath. The courthouse sat in the center of Main Street like a sleeping giant finally being stirred, and for the first time in decades, it wasn't just a building, it was a battleground. Today was the hearing. Not a full trial. Not yet, but enough to determine whether our case would move forward, whether Officer Gerald Kane would be formally held accountable, or whether the town would sweep one more story under the rug and go back to its potlucks and polite lies. I wore black. Not out of mourning, but because it made me feel armored. Devon wore his Sunday best. His tie was crooked, but I let it be. It was the first time I'd seen him stand this straight since the incident. Malcolm wore his usual pressed suit and a calm that looked unbreakable. But I'd seen the circles under his eyes, the quiet sighs when he thought no one was listening. He knew how much this mattered, how dangerous it had become. The courthouse steps were already crowded. Protesters on one side, counter-protesters on the other. Some carried signs that read, "Justice for Devon," and "Silence is complicity." Others shouted, "Support our police and lies can't break the law." And in between them, news crews, microphones, and cameras feeding our small-town pain into every television across the country. We walked through them like ghosts, untouched, unreadable. But inside, I was shaking. Every breath felt borrowed. Every stare felt loaded. Then he arrived. Gerald Kane stepped out of a black SUV flanked by attorney sunglasses, hiding the same eyes that once burned into me as he spit in my face. He was clean-shaven, dressed like a man ready for church, not court. His lawyer smiled for the cameras. "We're confident the facts will show my client acted within the bounds of his duty." Kane said nothing, not even a glance our way, like we were background noise. The hearing began. Malcolm stood and laid out our case, calm, factual, unflinching. He played the video, pausing on the frames that showed my face shocked, violated rising with resistance. Then he read the internal reports, each complaint a wound the department had stitched shut without treatment. Finally, he called Officer Raymond. That courtroom had never heard silence like that before. Raymond sat down, hands trembling, voice cracking, but he spoke. He admitted that he'd seen Kane target black residents, that he'd been told to look the other way, that he'd been part of it until Devon, until me. "I couldn't do it anymore," he said, eyes glassy. "I couldn't watch them destroy this woman and her son." The judge asked one question. Raymond answered, voice steady this time. "Yes," he spat in her face. "I saw it. I heard it." And just like that, the room shifted. Kane's team scrambled, called a witness who claimed I aggressively approached the officer, another who said Devon was known to hang with the wrong crowd. But the damage was done. The truth had cracked through the surface and everyone could feel it. Outside, the crowd had grown. By mid-afternoon, the mayor was forced to speak. He stood on the courthouse steps, flanked by city officials who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "We are deeply troubled by the allegations," he said, "and we encourage calm and patience as the legal process unfolds." But no one believed him. Not anymore. Then a sound rose low at first, then louder. A chant, "We believe her, we believe her," over and over until even the mayor stopped speaking. Even the cameras turned. The people had taken sides. And, for the first time, my side was the louder one. But it came with a cost. That night, our house was vandalized again. Red paint on the garage, liar, snake, race baiter. Devon wanted to clean it. I told him no. "Let them see it," I said. "Let the world see exactly what silence looks like when it thinks it's dying." Malcolm offered to move us, said it wasn't safe, but I refused. If we leave, they win. If we stay, we rise. He nodded, slow and proud. Then we dig in. More support arrived, activists, lawyers, even celebrities who posted our story and raised funds. A billboard went up on Highway 17 with our photo and the words, "Dignity has a name. Justice has a mother." I wept when I saw it, because I wasn't alone anymore, because the world had come to my town not to exploit our pain, but to amplify it. And still Gerald Kane said nothing. His silence became its own kind of confession. A loud absence, a hollow drumbeat behind every new headline. But I knew it wasn't over. I knew power doesn't die easy. That men like Kane don't retreat, they reload. Then came the twist I never saw coming. One night my phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. I opened it. A video. It was body cam footage we had never seen. The date stamp was from the parade. It showed Kane approaching Devon. You could hear his words, you could see the smirk, And then, clear as glass, his spit flying, landing, my gasp, my hand rising. The video ended with the words, "You brought this on yourself." I dropped the phone. My legs went weak. Devin caught me. "Who sent it?" he asked. I didn't know, but it didn't matter, because now we had the one thing they couldn't twist. Proof. And I knew as sure as breath in my lungs that everything was about to change. The video was 47 seconds long. That's all. But in those seconds it captured what words had failed to convince, what courtroom sketches could only imply, what news panels still debated. It captured truth. Undeniable. Unflinching. Brutal. It was early morning when Malcolm watched it. He said nothing for a full minute, his eyes' narrowed lips pressed into a line that vibrated with fury. Then he exhaled slow, like a man letting go of the weight of hundreds of years. "This," he said softly, "this is everything." We didn't know who sent it. The number was scrambled. The file had no metadata, but it bore the stamp of an official body cam Kane's, which meant someone inside the department, someone with clearance, had risked their badge to send it. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was justice. Maybe it was both. We posted it at 9:00 a.m. By 9:03 it had been shared 1,000 times. By noon it was on every major news network. By 3:00 p.m., the Harmony Falls Police Department had locked their social media accounts, released a trembling statement, and suspended Kane without pay. By sundown, a crowd of nearly 600 people stood outside City Hall with candles, singing, "A change is gonna come." It was happening. The shift. The break in the silence that had cloaked this town like smoke for generations. And at the center of it was a mother and her boy, and the spit that finally unmasked the rot beneath the badge. That evening, the mayor requested a private meeting. He didn't ask. He begged. Malcolm agreed on one condition: the meeting would be live-streamed. "We're not hiding," he said. "Not now. Not ever again." The mayor paled, but he nodded. Because even power knows when it's cornered. In the council chambers, we sat across from the town's most powerful, the mayor, the police chief, the city attorney. They spoke in measured tones, legal jargon dressed in the disguise of empathy. We acknowledge that mistakes were made. This is a time for healing. We'd like to move forward together. I said nothing, until Malcolm turned to me and whispered, "Say what you came to say." I looked at them all. Each man, each woman, each face that had once looked away when I cried for help. "You knew," I said quietly. "All of you. Maybe not that day, maybe not that spit, but you knew who he was. You knew what he did to others. And you said nothing. You let him carry a gun and a badge and call it duty. And now you want forgiveness." I leaned forward, voice sharp as cut glass. "Forgiveness comes after justice, not instead of it." The mayor wiped sweat from his brow. The city attorney shifted in his seat. The police chief, red-faced, looked down at the table like the wood grain might rescue him. Malcolm laid out our demands: full termination of Officer Gerald Kane, public apology and acknowledgement of systemic failures, independent investigation into the department's practices, body cam footage released for all incidents in the past 3 years, the establishment of a civilian oversight board with me, Alicia Monroe, as the chair. There was silence. Then the mayor, lips trembling, said the words I never thought I'd hear. Agreed. The next day, the town exploded. Headlines read, "Mother's Video. Topples police power in Harmony Falls. Body cam confirms allegations. Kane. Faces. Federal investigation from silence to strength. Alicia Monroe's Fight Reshapes a City. Kane was arrested that afternoon for falsifying reports and obstruction of justice. The footage not only showed the spit, it also revealed him turning off his body cam moments later, a clear violation. He was led out in handcuffs, no sunglasses, no smirk, just a man exposed. The community gathered outside the courthouse as he was driven away. Someone shouted, "Shame." But most stayed quiet, because the truth didn't need noise. It just needed space to echo. Devin watched it unfold on TV. Then he turned to me and said, "Do you think Dad would be proud?" I knelt beside him, my hands cupping his face. "He'd be proud of you, of how you stood, of how you didn't let them turn you small. We embraced not as survivors, but as victors. Because the system had tried to erase us, and we wrote ourselves back in." The following week, the first meeting of the new Oversight Board was held in the Harmony Falls Library. Folding chairs, old coffee, nervous eyes. But we were there. Black, white, young, old, and we were equals for the first time. I sat at the head of the table. Not because I asked to, but because I earned it. We spoke of accountability, of transparency, of change. And not just the kind you write in mission statements, but the kind that bleeds into sidewalks and schoolyards, into parades and patrol cars. And when it ended, when the cameras left and the sun dipped behind the courthouse, I stood on the steps where it all began. I looked out at the quiet street. No chants, no flashbulbs, just peace. But the kind of peace you build, not the kind you beg for, because a town had taken sides. And this time, it chose truth. It rained the morning that Kane was sentenced. Not a dramatic downpour, just a slow, steady drizzle that washed the sidewalks and soaked the old American flags hanging limp from the courthouse windows. People said it felt like the town was finally exhaling, but I didn't feel relief. Not yet. Relief comes when healing begins. And for me, healing would never come from watching a man walk into prison. It would come from watching my son walk into a future where no one ever questions his right to stand. The judge read the sentence in a voice that sounded tired. Kane received 4 years in federal prison for obstruction civil rights violations and tampering with public records. It wasn't the life sentence some demanded, but it was more than anyone in this town thought possible 6 months ago. As the gavel fell, I didn't cheer. I didn't clap. I just closed my eyes and let the sound settle in my chest like the final beat of a long, bitter drum. Outside, the town waited. I stepped onto the courthouse steps to find the entire square filled children in school uniforms, elders in wheelchairs, pastors in robes, veterans in full dress. And in the center of it all was Devin, holding a sign that simply read, "We are not invisible." I walked to him. We stood there, mother and son, shoulder to shoulder, in a town that once tried to erase us. Reporters surged forward. Microphones were lifted. Questions flew like arrows. But I raised my hand and silence fell. I didn't want this fight, I said. But I wasn't given a choice. The day Officer Kane spit in my face, he wasn't just disrespecting me. He was declaring that my child and children who look like him don't belong. That our dignity is disposable. But Harmony Falls has proven him wrong. You've proven him wrong. Because justice is not a gift, it's a right. And we're done begging for it. The crowd erupted. Not with noise, but with something deeper, tears. Nods, hands reaching out to touch mine like I was something sacred. But I wasn't. I was just a mother. One who refused to stay quiet. That night I returned home for the first time in peace. not quiet, but peace. There's a difference. Quiet can mean fear. Peace means no longer hiding. I walked into my garden. The tomatoes had grown wild during the chaos. I picked one, wiped it clean, and smiled for the first time without sorrow behind it. Devin came out with his old camcorder, something he used to play with before the world grew too heavy. "You want to record something?" he asked. "Only if it's the truth," I said. He hit record. The red light blinked. I looked into the lens. My name is Alicia Monroe. I'm not an activist. I'm not a politician. I'm a mother. I buried a husband who fought for this country. I raised a son who was almost crushed by the weight of its lies. And I stood up because no one else would. Not to be famous, not to be feared, but to be free. We uploaded it that night. It went viral within hours. A week later, the governor called. Invited me to speak at a state panel on police reform. I agreed. Not because I believed the system could change overnight, but because I believed that sometimes the right words spoken from the right pain can light fires in the right places. Devin returned to school the following fall. Some kids treated him like a hero. Others avoided him. That was okay. Change is never smooth. But one day he came home beaming. They asked me to run for student council, he said. Said they need someone who knows how to lead. I nodded. Well, they picked the right one. He walked taller after that. Laughed louder. And I watched as the boy who once flinched at shadows began casting his own. The town began to change too. The oversight board reviewed every complaint from the past 5 years. 2 officers were removed. A third was suspended. Body cam usage became mandatory. Training was restructured. And once a month, a community circle was held where people could speak without fear and be heard. One afternoon, as I swept the porch, a young white officer I didn't recognize approached. Nervous. "Mrs. Monroe," he said, removing his cap. I wanted to say I saw what happened. I wasn't proud to wear the badge then. I'm trying to make it mean something better now. I looked at him, measured his eyes, his sincerity. "Then listen more than you speak," I said, "and protect the ones nobody else will." He nodded, hat clutched to his chest. Then he walked away. That's how it is, I've learned. Justice doesn't roar. It doesn't always wear robes or carry gavels. Sometimes it comes in small moments, a boy raising his hand in class, a neighbor crossing the street to apologize, a police officer finally learning how to serve instead of control. I still carry the scar of that day. Not on my skin, but in my memory. I don't forget. I don't forgive easily. But I've learned to grow something from it. In my garden, a new plaque stands under the oak tree Marcus planted before he died. It reads, "Truth will not be silenced. Dignity will not be denied." Every morning, birds gather there. Every morning, I sip my coffee and breathe in the kind of peace you fight for. And every morning, I whisper to the rising sun, "We are still here." In the end, this wasn't just a story about spit or a badge. It was about what happens when silence is shattered by courage. When a mother stands up not just for her son, but for every unseen, unheard voice in a town that forgot how to care. Gerald Kane thought his uniform gave him power. But real power came from truth, from community, from a woman who chose dignity over fear. This story reminds us that justice isn't handed down, it's claimed. That peace doesn't come by staying quiet, it comes by standing tall. If this story moved, you don't stay silent. Share it. Comment below. Tell us how injustice has touched your life. Because every voice matters, and one voice can start a movement. Subscribe to our channel for more real stories that expose, inspire, and ignite change. Leave a comment to stand with Alicia Devon and families like theirs across the country. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because the next story might be yours. Truth doesn't need permission. It just needs to be heard.